All right, we're talking about the ROVAL here for both the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, primarily the Cup Series. No video or anything. It's been raining for about 3 days at this point in Houston, and I'd be better off recording from under a parked car. I don't have a ring light or anything, or a whatever the round ones that the streamers use. When we look at the ROVAL race, and really when I look back at how I've done this year, the races that I've done best, I haven't had any biases, any leans, any real feel towards any certain drivers entering the weekend. It's been very much going off of what the weekend is giving us in terms of where these guys are at in terms of speed, and what NASCAR has given us in terms of their qualifying position and the rules that we have to follow. And that main rule that we have to follow this weekend is that there are stage yellows back in action this weekend, and the fact that we have people racing for points. When we look at the ROVAL, I envision a race, and they're making them go through the chicane before the start-finish line, which is like huge in changing the outcome of this race. You are not going to have people wrecking in a turn one. If you look at most motorsports that run road courses and give the leader a huge advantage entering the restart zone, entering the first straightaway, entering where the start-finish line is, whatever the case may be, it's overpowered. It just is. And when we look at this race here at the ROVAL, I just find it hard to believe that the guys who start up front who don't chase stage points, I find it hard to believe that they aren't the ones competing for the win. And so everything's going to change if we get like fucking Bubba Wallace, Chastain, Kyle Busch, Keselowski on the pole. I think outside of that, we're pretty safe in playing the guy who starts first and playing guys who start up front. When we talk about guys who are fighting for stage points, when we look back at last year's race, just because, Gen 6 and everything like that, the people who stayed out for stage points in the Bank for ROVAL 400 last year could not get back up through the field. They were fucking trapped in the field. The only driver who was really able to make any headway was Chase Briscoe. He finishes like second in stage 2, staying out to get the points. And he's just buried in the back of the field all day. The race goes green up until 8 or 9 to go, when we have a yellow for one of the display banners getting on the track. And at that point, Briscoe had only raced his way back up to 13th, and he was the one who was making the most headway of the guys who stayed out for points. If you were staying out for points, you were absolutely screwing yourself. I have to believe that Reddick can get there without running for stage points. I'm hoping that he can just get through chasing for the win. The biggest, and we have to pay attention entering this week if there's any inkling, if there's any information, and I hate just being like, oh, well, we got to wait to Sunday. We got to wait till they qualify. But Larson is plus 15 right now. Keselowski's plus 2. Tyler Reddick's minus 2. Bubba Wallace minus 9. Chastain minus 10. Kyle Busch is minus 26. If Kyle Busch is, there's two ways for me to envision him racing for the lead or the win. And it's him starting dead first or outside the top 10 with no chance to get points. If he's like starting ninth, I gotta think Kyle Busch races for points. I'm at least not having biases or anything towards these guys. I'm gonna really try not to play Kyle Busch. I'm gonna really try not to play Chastain. I'm not gonna play Bubba Wallace. I'm just gonna tell you right now. There's no fucking way I'm playing Bubba Wallace. Keselowski, depends on where he starts. I really hate to say that. I know this is kind of vague and stuff, but these are the main, these 5 individuals. Keselowski, Reddick, Wallace, Chastain, Kyle Busch are the guys that we just have to wait for to see where they're at mentally, where they're at in terms of speed. Since it's a cutoff race and staying out for points is just a way to kill your DFS line. Outside of that, I don't believe we're going to see much movement in this race at all. If you look back at last year's race, we saw a ton of place differential come through. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Haley, Buescher, Bubba Wallace, Briscoe, as I said, finishes 9th after everything. We have Corey LaJoie going from 30th to 12th. Hamlin, 24th to 13th, but that's because we basically had 2 green, white checkers at the end of this race. We did not have a yellow in this race that was natural. We had the 2 stage cautions and 2 debris cautions. We did not have anybody wrecking each other. We didn't have any chaos at all. Outside of guys moving people in the last restarts and stuff like that. But that was it, And the reason I'm bringing that up is when we look at the races this year that have been the road courses, and I understand we didn't have stage yellows for these races, but we have had a very, very green season this year. When we look back at, and the ones that I would want to bother looking at would be Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, and Sonoma. When we look back at the Watkins Glen race, 1 yellow in the entire race. This was based on where you are in terms of speed. Watkins Glen, you had second place, first place, seventh place, starting positions wise. Second, first, seventh, sixth, fourth, eighth, all finished in the top 10. Okay? There was no passing in this race. Okay? And that's why they're bringing the yellows back. They're like, well, this racing is fucking horrible. Let's bring the yellows back so these guys can get crazy and we can get some viewerships. When we look back at the Indianapolis GP, race went green outside of the yellow on lap 3. The race went green. This race was decided on where you are in terms of speed. Starting positions who finish inside the top 10: 4th, 3rd, 1st, 2nd, 9th, 6th, 7th, 8th. So we have those guys finishing in the top 10. We're not seeing any movement at all in this race. Or in these races this year. When we look back at Sonoma, okay, we had the yellow at the very end of the race involving Denny Hamlin. Outside of that, this bitch was going to be green as well. So things get jumbled up at the end of that restart because we have people pitting, whatever the case may be. When I look at the ROVAL in the Cup Series here, I want to play as many guys in the top 10 as possible. I would love it if playoff guys do not start in the top 10. Now, clearly, I have no way to predict that, if that's going to happen or not. But ideally, we can have not a lot of playoff guys start in the top 10s, or at least the guys who aren't points racing in the top 10, and we can just try and jam as many of those top 10 starters, top 15 starters, at least 5 of my 6 drivers I want to have in the top 12. I want to have starting in the top 12. I want them to hold on to that position in this race. Now, I'm not going to go crazy this weekend. Okay, bad luck just in the Survivor. Got killed at Bristol. 1 position off exiting Daytona. So, I'm just back to probably just chilling through the ROVAL. We'll get through the rest of this year. Probably gonna do like 6 lines or something. Nothing crazy. But I really like the 9K range and the 8K range in this race. We have McDowell, we have AJ, we have McDowell at 91, who's just, a god among men at this point. AJ Allmendinger, $9,000, only need 45 points for him to pay off. Chris Buescher at 88. We have Logano at 82. We have Harvick at 78. We have Gibbs at 8,000. We have Bowman at 77. We have Cindric at 75. Briscoe at 74. Keselowski 72. When I view this race here, now unless, Larson, Byron, clearly the more expensive guys, if they start up front, we're going to play them. But the way I just view this race is I want to build a pretty balanced lineup. I just want to try and jam in as many people as I physically can that start inside the top 15. And the way I'm going to do that is most likely by playing a lot of 8 and 9K guys, probably with 1 or 2 10K guys just if they're starting up front. I'm not going to be paying up for place differential for the Cup Series race. I just don't want to do that. If this race gets crazy, well, then I don't know what the heck they're doing because they're not even going to be in a pack, bro. They're like, the restart zone is being interrupted by this dumbass carousel. There's a real chance, we've seen it at Chicago, we've seen it at these other racetracks, to where they push the restart zone back before the final straightaway, before the start finish line. You will see the field spread out. We saw it at Chicago, we saw it at all these tracks. We're gonna see it at the ROVAL. The leader has such an advantage. The guys who are starting up front have an advantage. There's a real chance that if you're starting 27th in this race, by the time you come out of NASCAR turn 4, you turn left in the chicane, you turn right out of the chicane, you're on the front straightaway at Charlotte, past the start-finish line, the leader is already in the infield, most likely out of the first left-hand turn down that short chute before you get to the first right-hander in the infield. You are at least an 1/8 of a lap, 1/6 of a lap, 1/4 of a lap behind the leader. You're not making that up. You're just not making that up in speed in this race. Yellows are going to dictate this. And we know where the yellows are coming out. They're coming out the stages, okay? But you're still like dictating in a sense of like where people stay out and pit. Like if it happens where it's not stage yellows, like if we have some bullshit green white checkered or some yellow late in stage 3 or whatever, but like you're not gaining that speed back. You're not gaining up the positions. You're not getting any of that stuff back. So I think place differential is a trap. I don't care how good they look. They're starting back there for a reason. Okay? You can't fake speed at the ROVAL. And I know I kind of say that a lot, but like we've seen that backed up this year, and we've had multiple drivers talk about it. We have Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin. Multiple drivers have said, Harvick, for example, with Stewart Haas. There are going to be weeks that teams just miss with this car. You miss with the setup. You're just going to arrive slow, and you can't really get that back. You know? You can lean on intermediate speed. You can lean on quote-unquote short track speed when you're at those types of tracks. But like specifically the road courses, we have seen the guys who don't have speed, they aren't able to gain that back, get it back at some point during the race weekend. And so if you're slow in practice, you're going to be slow for qualifying, and you're going to be slow for the race. So when I'm looking at the Cup Series race here this weekend, I'm paying up for starters. If they get stupid, they wreck, whatever. That's just what's going to kill me. But I think a lot of place differentials are going to be a trap. I think a lot of the NASCAR guys racing for points, we need to really pay attention to those 5 drivers to see if we can tell what their plan is going to be entering the weekend. I'm sure they're going to at least talk about it or whatever. But yeah, for the Cup Series, I just want to play the guys up front. For Xfinity Series, it's the same thing, even more so because the talent is even more, spread out. If you're qualifying in the back of the field, goddamn, dude, like you're there for a reason, man. The only people I would trust in the back of the field to get through are going to be the JD Motorsports guys, are going to be, like Garrett Smithley or Joey Gaze, whoever's in like a Gaze car or whatever. SS Greenlight, probably not going to go to it. Those cars don't have speed here. When we think of other teams that are going to be in the back, Alpha Beta Prime going to just be fucking slow. I think it's going to be, unless, like, I'm trying to think here. I mean, if Alpha Beta Prime has any speed, we'll see it in practice, and we'll see it in Q. Like, just don't play the slow guy. Just don't play the slow guys this weekend. That's my approach this weekend, man. I rewatched the Cup Series ROVAL race, the last 2 actually, just to see where these guys were at in stages, and that's just what I'm seeing, man. And I re-looked at all the road courses this year, and track position is huge. Track position is the name of the game. You need the track position. I don't think you need any other data point for that. We know who's been good at road courses recently. That's not a secret. We know McDowell's been good. We know Buscher's been good. We know Reddick's been good. AJ, Elliott, Logano, Larson, Cindric, Bell, Chastain, Kyle Busch, Suarez. Like, we all know who's good. We all know who's getting a lot of top 10s and finishing well. It just depends on where people qualify. Like, I think that's the main thing we need to focus on. Not necessarily names, not necessarily what each individual is doing, but where people are starting this race. And that's really my 2 cents entering the ROVAL weekend. See you guys for live show Saturday and Sunday. And yeah, I don't know, just guys, I'm playing track position. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Oh well, but that's where I'm at. I'm not paying up for place differential.